think you're going to feed your family. However, by midsummer 1948, he was working for me. And he did work for me from the rest of his life. In fact, by the time he died, many people thought that he had started this surveying business and brought me up as a surveyor. So I feel like that's an accomplishment on my part, as well as on his part. At one time, when I left Fairhope, we did not have a happy relationship. When I was 16 or 17, I guess I was 18. I was 18, I undertook to force him to do something that he thought we should not be done, and I was convinced should be done. And in the effort, the altercation, I hit him. I mean, like I hit him with my fist. I found out it was one of those fights you hear about where I hit him and he hit me and I hit the ground. And by the time I hit the ground, I realized I had made a serious mistake. I learned just real quickly that a man's fist is a great deal harder and tougher than a boy's chin. But I think he did exactly what needed to be done at that time. And by the time I was through with the Navy, I was anxious to make peace with him and convince him that I was remorseful over that incident. It's the only incident of any sort of that I remember ever occurring that I really felt bad about. But we healed that and had at least 20 good years together. And see, I guess there were 8 in our family. And I think maybe one of my sisters didn't graduate from the organic school.
Grace.
Because she quit school to go to work at Brookley Field during the war, during World War II. And before she got through with that, she found the man and married. So she never did graduate. That's always bothered her. Because all the rest of us did.
We've taped her. She's told her story.
Uh-huh.
Diane, tell us something about your experience after you met Wild Blanche Brown.
Well, there's one thing I want Claude to mention and keep in mind, and that is your experience when you went to Panama and the language barrier you ran into. But just wait and let me talk a little bit, and just don't forget that, or we want to get back to it. I was thinking, Claude's brought back some memories that I hadn't thought about until just today, but there was still quite a lab at the organic school in 1954. Probably not, and I don't remember a lot about it because I only got to attend 8th grade and the last half of junior high and my freshman year in high school and then my senior year. But I can remember Mrs. Horn was teaching science, and it was in the back of the library, and there was an awful lot of equipment in there. What exactly, I don't remember a whole lot about using it, what I did with it, except that it was fascinating and it was a lot of fun. I thoroughly enjoyed the science classes with Miss Horn. I remember sometimes I thought she was very mean, but I'm sure we brought that on because we weren't the greatest bunch of kids, I think, that ever entered the organic school. There was another girl who entered the organic school the same year I did, and that was Barbara Hoffman. She and I became real good friends because we both came to the organic school the last half of junior high and felt uh, companionship just due to that. And Barbara was a real smart girl and a real nice girl, so I enjoyed being friends with her. The other thing that Claude's brought to mind, of course, Mrs. Johnson had been gone a long time by the time I came to the organic school. But, and I didn't have the privilege of meeting her, but I did have Mr. Frederick, believe it or not, that much later, for folk dancing. We only had him part of 1 year, but they had a folk dance teacher lined up, and for some reason they didn't work out or didn't come back. And of course, I wasn't involved in the administration, have no idea why, but I just remember we had Mr. Frederick for a while for folk dance teacher, and it was an interesting experience. By the time we were dancing, by the time I was at school, there wasn't a folk dance team. I don't remember us doing anything except locally. We had some exhibitions, and we always danced for arts and crafts. And we danced the 5 days that arts and crafts went on. I didn't really like folk dancing much either. I think that it's a real advantage to attend the organic school kindergarten through your senior year, because the folk dancing just comes naturally and easily. But I didn't have as much trouble with it as some of the boys, I think. And the group of boys in the class that I was in were all very good folk dancers. A lot of them had attended organic for years, and they were good dancers and they enjoyed it. So it was being a tomboy. If the boys could handle it, I figured I could too, and I did enjoy dancing. And I learned a great deal from it. And it helped with my ballroom dancing, which I had already started doing with my mother and some of her friends. And it strengthened my appreciation for the ballroom dancing and for all kinds of dancing. So I really did enjoy that. But, and
But
of course,
you say what happened about Blanche Brown.
well, I was just fixing to get to that. Of course, my biggest fascination was every afternoon, and when I talked earlier, the freedom that I found. I could leave campus at noon and go down to Blanche Brown's house, which was only 2 blocks from the organic school campus and from the school home. And we had a long lunch period. We had an hour, and I would usually quickly eat my lunch and then slip off down to Blanche Brown's and stay down there till time for afternoon classes. And quite often she had horses in her backyard, and could even slip in a short ride before we had to be back for classes. And Blanche Brown was quite a character, and she did have a bunch of half wild horses, but it wasn't anything like wild horses on the prairie. They were just horses that weren't trained perfectly, and they were relatively safe for young people to ride. And she had a wonderful policy, a wonderful way with kids, and a wonderful way with horses. And she owned quite a number of horses, but she would lease them to children in the community who didn't have their own horse on a monthly basis. And they would pay pasturage, and then that horse was just like theirs for a month. And they could buy feed, extra feed for it. They could do anything they wanted to with it. It was their responsibility as well as their privilege to take care of the horse, and then they could ride it all they wanted to. And so as soon as I could, I saved up enough money to pay pasturage on a horse and rented a horse from her for a month, and did that the whole time I was here. And then I would spend my afternoons as soon as school was out. And unlike Claude, I was kind of glad for school to get out, because I'd rather be riding horses than than a lot of the things they offered at school. But school wasn't a punishment so much for me here. I did enjoy school, and I felt comfortable with the other students. I felt comfortable with the teachers. Now, I had always been able to get along pretty good with teachers, but there was a difference here in that I did seem to fit in with the other students. And that was very, very valuable to me because I hadn't been able to feel a part of any group or feel a part of any school situation. And I felt so strongly about it that when I thought I had changed, I thought I had grown up, and I thought it was just the difference in me. Claude's oldest son, Paul, was in the class with me. He was one of the better folk dancers, and he was one of the better students in arts and crafts. And unlike Claude, Paul did have a knack for working with clay. And I remembered my first day in arts and crafts, and the Miss Bell was teaching arts and crafts, and she had everybody sit down and paint a picture. And I didn't much like the idea of painting pictures, and then Paul came in and she told Paul to go wedge some clay to get it ready. And I couldn't help but resent that, because, oh, I would love to work with the clay, and here I was having to sit here and paint this dumb picture. And I quickly figured out how, next year I was the one that got to do the clay wedging the first day of school, so I didn't have to paint that introductory picture. But it was easy. I mean, it wasn't a case of some people were privileged. Paul knew how to wedge clay. He had been here. I was new. But mostly in arts and crafts, we were allowed to do the things that we wanted to. She would bring up things, and we could try different projects, whatever new opportunity, whatever was new out that she had supplies for, she'd try to get us all to try it. But as far as what we stuck with, we could work on just about anything we wanted to, and I did quite a bit of work with clay.